Okay, so let me get this straight. Toilets with heads battling it out for, like, world domination. Or maybe just the right to the last roll of toilet paper.
The Skibidi Toilet video.
What in the actual porcelain hell is going on here?
Yeah, wildly popular with Gen Alpha.
Dude, Gen Alpha. More like Gen WTF.
It is a bit much, yeah.
Seriously, it's like someone took all my weirdest childhood nightmares, threw them in a blender with a plumber's toolbox, and hit puree.
Visually, yeah, all those disembodied heads just bobbing around in porcelain purgatory.
Yeah, it's the stuff of existential dread, dude. Like, is this what the internet has done to us? Reduced us to screaming heads trapped in the bowels of... Well...
There might be something to that.
Unsettling.
Like whole heads and toilets thing.
It's straight up abject. Like that primal fear we all have of things that are both familiar and totally wrong.
Exactly. Julia Kristeva, she called it the abject. That feeling of horror and disgust, when something reminds you of your own mortality. All the stuff we usually repress, our animalistic side.
Repress. Dude, I'm pretty sure I just regressed back to toddlerhood watching those videos. Like suddenly I'm 5 years old again, afraid of the toilet monster that lives in the sewer.
Except now the toilet monster has a head, sings weird songs, and shoots lasers out of its,
Don't remind me.
Yeah.
It's like my brain is trying to process this on a level it wasn't designed for. I'm pretty sure I can actually feel my synapses misfiring.
That feeling of mental overload might actually be part of the appeal.
What?
Just think about it. We live in a world where we're constantly bombarded with information, right? Everything's fragmented, chaotic.
You're totally right. It's like my Twitter feed exploded and somehow gave birth to these porcelain abominations.
And in that sense, maybe Skibidi Toilet is kind of a reflection of our own fragmented selves.
What do you mean?
Like these disembodied heads lost in a chaotic digital world. They're like a visual metaphor for ego dissolution.
Ego dissolution. Wait, is that like a fancy way of saying we're all losing our minds?
Well, not exactly losing our minds, but maybe losing our sense of self, right? The internet, social media, it all creates these fragmented identities, these virtual personas that don't always reflect who we really are.
Dude, I'm like 10 different people on the internet. There's meme lord me, political rant me, existential crisis me.
Exactly.
It's exhausting.
And maybe that's what these Skibidi Toilets are tapping into, that feeling of being scattered, disoriented, lost in a sea of digital noise.
Okay, but why toilets? Of all the things to represent our existential angst, why toilets?
Well, think about it. The toilet is a symbol of waste, of things we want to get rid of.
Okay.
Then you stick a head on it, the symbol of individuality, our higher selves. It's a pretty jarring juxtaposition.
It's like our egos are literally being flushed down the toilet.
Right.
Which, let's be real, is kind of a mood right now.
It's certainly not the most uplifting imagery.
Yeah.
But maybe that's the point. Maybe Skibidi Toilet is kind of forcing us to confront the darker aspects of our digital existence.
And we're doing it by watching toilets shoot lasers at each other. Man, the future is weird.
It's definitely not what I pictured when I was a kid. Flying cars, sure, but laser-toting toilets, not so much.
Okay, but here's a question. Is this all just like a giant joke?
Yeah.
Because I gotta admit, I'm laughing my ass off, even though I'm simultaneously horrified.
That's the interesting thing about humor. It can be a way of coping with difficult emotions, distancing ourselves from things that are just too painful or too scary to face directly.
So, like, we're laughing at these toilet monstrosities to avoid having a full-blown existential meltdown.
Possibly. Remember Freud, he talked about humor as a defense mechanism, releasing pent-up anxiety and aggression in a socially acceptable way.
So instead of screaming into the void, we're watching toilets scream at each other.
Yes.
Makes sense.
In a twisted, internet-fueled way.
Okay, but here's another thought. Maybe it's not all about anxiety and ego death. Maybe there's something else going on here. Something deeper. Something more...
Deeper.
Cosmic.
Cosmic toilet.
Okay, hear me out. Remember that thing about the collective unconscious? Carl Jung's idea that we all share these deep, primal archetypes.
Of course. The hero, the shadow, the wise old toilet.
Maybe not a toilet, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
What if these Skibidi toilets are tapping into something primal, something universal?
It's an interesting thought. Maybe they represent some deep-seated fear we all share, the fear of losing control, being consumed by the very things we create.
Like technology.
Yeah.
The internet.
Yeah.
The endless scroll of social media.
Exactly. It's like we've created this digital Frankenstein's monster, and now it's coming back to haunt us in the form of, well, toilet-headed monstrosities.
Dude, that is so deep.
Yeah.
Like deeper than the Mariana Trench filled with, you guessed it, toilets.
And it circles back to that idea of the abject. These Skibidi toilets, they're both repulsive and fascinating.
Yeah.
They make us laugh and cringe at the same time.
Totally.
They tap into something primal, something we can't quite explain.
It's like they're holding up a warped mirror to our own humanity, showing us all the messy, contradictory parts we usually try to hide.
And maybe that's the point. Maybe Skibidi Toilet isn't just about entertainment,
No.
but about making us confront these uncomfortable truths, about ourselves and the world we've created.
Whoa, dude, I think we just cracked the code. Skibidi Toilet. A philosophical treatise disguised as a viral internet meme.
And maybe we're just high.
Maybe both.
Yeah.
I mean, the best ideas usually come when you're a little elevated.
True enough. But hey, if we can find meaning in toilet-headed monstrosities, imagine what else we can unlock.
This is just the tip of the iceberg, dude. The porcelain-encrusted tip of the iceberg.
Where do we go from here?
Deeper. We go deeper.
Deeper into the porcelain abyss. I'm game if you are.
Dude, I'm always down for a deep dive, especially when it involves toilets and existential dread. But seriously, where do we even go from here? We've got abject terror, ego dissolution, cosmic archetypes. It's like a philosophical buffet in here.
Well, we were talking about humor as a defense mechanism. Maybe that's a good place to start digging.
Okay, so we're laughing to keep from crying. Makes sense. The world's a dumpster fire right now.
Exactly. Climate change, political polarization, the relentless march of the algorithms. It's enough to make anyone want to curl up in the fetal position and sob uncontrollably.
Or, watch toilets with heads beat the crap out of each other. It's strangely cathartic.
That's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah.
Skibidi Toilet allows us to tap into those primal urges, those aggressive impulses we usually have to repress.
So instead of actually punching that annoying coworker who keeps stealing my lunch,
Yeah.
I can just imagine them wait, what would be the Skibidi Toilet equivalent of an office nemesis? A stapler with a head. A coffee machine that shoots hot, caffeinated rage.
Gee, you're getting it. The absurdity becomes a way to channel those aggressive impulses, without actually causing harm. It's cathartic, almost.
Cathartic, but also kind of disturbing. I'm starting to feel bad for these disembodied heads, stuck in a porcelain prison, fighting for who even knows what.
And that brings us back to the idea of ego dissolution. We were talking about earlier, these Skibidi toilets, they're like a reflection of our own fragmented selves, lost in this chaotic digital world.
Dude, I'm totally feeling that. It's like my attention span is shattered. My identity, it's scattered across 1,000 different apps and profiles.
And in that sense, maybe Skibidi Toilet isn't just a reflection of our anxieties,
No.
but also a way of coping with them, by embracing the absurdity, by surrendering to the chaos.
We're transcending the toilet bowl existence.
Well, maybe not transcending,
Okay.
but at least finding a way to laugh at it. Because honestly, what else can you do when you're faced with all of this?
Okay, but here's a thought. What if it's not all out just anxiety and ego death?
Yeah.
What if there's a glimmer of hope buried in all this porcelain carnage?
Ooh, I like where you're going with this. Tell me more.
Okay, so hear me out. Remember that thing about regression? Going back to a more childlike state of mind.
Freud's classic defense mechanism. When the going gets tough, the tough revert to thumb-sucking.
Exactly. But maybe it's not always a bad thing. Maybe sometimes we need to let go of all the adulting BS. The pressure to be productive, to be successful, and whatever.
To embrace the freedom of just being.
Yeah. Toilets don't care about deadlines, taxes, or the existential dread of late-stage capitalism. They just are.
And maybe by tapping into that primal childlike energy, we can kind of reconnect with a sense of pure joy. Unadulterated joy. The kind of joy that comes from watching, toilets with heads fighting for reasons unknown.
Dude, that is so deep. Deeper than the Mariana Trench filled with, you guessed it, toilets.
And it circles back to that idea of the collective unconscious. Maybe, despite all the chaos and absurdity, we're all searching for that same sense of connection, that shared experience of wonder and...
Toilet-based hilarity.
I was going to say absurdity, but yeah, toilet-based hilarity works too.
Okay, but here's another mind-blowing thought. What if the Skibidi toilets aren't actually fighting? What if it's all a giant dance-off?
A dance-off?
Think about it. The synchronized movements, the epic battles. It's like a bizarre porcelain ballet.
It's not as far-fetched as it sounds. Remember how we were talking about the breakdown of traditional narratives?
Yeah, and how maybe that reflects a shift in how we understand the world.
Exactly. So if we just throw out the idea of conflict and replace it with artistic expression,
It's like a giant, chaotic, toilet-themed performance art piece.
a commentary on the fluidity of identity, the absurdity of existence,
The inherent beauty of a well-choreographed toilet flush.
maybe. Or maybe it's just toilets with heads doing their thing.
But isn't that the beauty of it all? Like, we can project all these deep meanings onto it, or we can just sit back and enjoy the ride.
And isn't that ultimately what art is all about? Making us think, making us feel, making us question.
And sometimes making us laugh until milk comes out of our noses.
Perhaps that too.
Okay, but seriously, this whole Skibidi Toilet phenomenon, it's got me thinking about the future. Like, what does it say about the world Gen Alpha is inheriting?
That's a great question. And it's one that deserves a deeper dive
Yeah.
into the swirling vortex of the porcelain unknown.
Dude, I think I need another hit for this. Okay, brain reboot complete. THC levels optimal. Let's do this. Gen Alpha, Skibidi Toilet, the future of humanity. Hit me with your cosmic insights, oh wise one.
All right, let's dive back into the Porcelain Abyss. You are asking what Skibidi Toilet says about the world Gen Alpha is inheriting.
Right.
It's a fascinating question, really.
It's like staring into the abyss of a toilet bowl, man. Deep, dark, and full of mud. Well, you know.
Perhaps their world will be one where traditional narratives are completely shattered, where meaning is found in the absurdity, in the chaos itself.
Dude, that's heavy. Like, are we talking full-on postmodernism here? The death of the author?
Yeah.
The fragmentation of truth? Toilet-headed deconstructionists running wild?
It's possible. Gen Alpha has grown up immersed in a digital world, right? Information flows constantly. The boundaries between reality and virtuality, they're increasingly blurred. Their understanding of narrative, of cause and effect, it might be fundamentally different from ours.
So, like, they're not looking for a hero's journey.
Right.
A clear beginning, middle, and end. They're just vibing with the chaos, embracing the absurdity of it all.
Maybe. Or maybe they're creating their own narratives, their own meanings out of the fragments. Remember those TikTok trends where they're remixing and recontextualizing Skibidi Toilet?
Yeah.
Turning it into something entirely new?
It's like they're taking this chaotic mess and shaping it into something that makes sense to them, like building a new world out of the ruins of the old.
Exactly. And that world might be one where hierarchy and authority are constantly questioned, where traditional power structures are subverted and challenged. Remember how we were talking about the lack of clear narrative in Skibidi Toilet?
Yeah, it's like there's no overarching story, no good guys or bad guys, just toilets doing their thing.
And maybe that reflects a deeper distrust of grand narratives, of any single version of truth. It's a postmodern world, right? Where meaning is fluid, subjective.
Dude, my brain is melting.
Yeah.
Too many big words.
Sorry.
But I think I get it. It's like in a world where everything's constantly shifting and changing, you got to be able to adapt to create your own meaning out of the chaos.
Precisely. And Skibidi Toilet, with its nonsensical humor, its grotesque imagery, its blatant disregard for logic, it might be the perfect training ground for navigating that kind of world.
So what, we're raising a generation of toilet-worshipping nihilists?
Not necessarily worshiping, but certainly engaging with, and maybe even subverting the symbols and narratives that shape their reality.
Man, this is deep. Like, deeper than a, well, you know the rest.
But seriously, is there any hope for the future? Or are we all just going to end up as disembodied heads stuck in a digital toilet bowl? I think there's always hope. Gen Alpha is creative, adaptable, and more connected than any generation before them. They have the potential to build a better world, one that embraces diversity, challenges injustice, and finds meaning in the unexpected.
Dude, that's actually kind of beautiful. Maybe those toilet heads aren't so bad after all.
Maybe they're a sign, a symbol of the chaos and potential of the future. A future that's messy, unpredictable, and ultimately up to us to create.
So, dear listeners, as we flush this episode down the swirling vortex of the internet, remember to keep an open mind, embrace the absurdity, and never underestimate the power of a well-placed toilet plunger.
And wash your hands. Always wash your hands.